Computer. Pause. In seinem Zimmer. Mit einer geschlossenen Tür.
Wondered what he was talking about, but soon there was a hammer and an anvil under the blanket. Looking at the surprised dwarf, the man in black said that he had robbed the dragon's nest. The blacksmith, not believing his eyes, asked how he did it, but without waiting for an answer, grabbed the hammer and said that it was really his good. He even gave praise to the god Perignon. Seeing this, the man in black grinned. Joyfully raising the hammer, the blacksmith said that the guy was his savior, so he would do everything in the best possible way if he brought raw materials. The Lord of Shadows laughed and asked if the dwarf was lying, to which he hid himself in the pile and said that there was no place for lies in their clan. If the dwarf said, then he will do it. Smiling, the Lord of Shadows began to take out something, saying that it turned out well, because he had already taken out the raw materials. Handing it to the blacksmith, he said that here it is. Looking at the glowing purple metal, the dwarf said that it was a magical metal and he was sure that it was difficult to get something like that. What the hell did the guy want to create? Smiling broadly, the Lord of Shadows said that this was a very important thing for him, which made the dwarf even sweat. After which the guy said that he wanted a lockpick and indicated the approximate size. The dwarf was surprised and asked with concern that he was sure that he wanted to spend such a rare raw material on a skeleton key. Smiling, the Shadow Lord nodded. The dwarf was still worried and advised him to think it over again. With such a metal, you can create an object endowed with whatever incredible ability. To this, the Lord of Shadows replied that he just needed the master key to be able to recover itself. The dwarf asked why the dog needed such an object, to which he replied that the lockpicks break so often when he opens the locks that he is already beginning to feel sick, and so he decided that it would be nice to get something more durable. The dwarf was annoyed by such a stupid reason, and asked if that was really the whole reason. Seeing this, the Lord of Shadows asked the blacksmith that he did not want to take up work. Wasn't he from the proud Red Anvil blacksmith clan? They never seemed to lie. Trembling, the dwarf clicked and took his hammer and began forging. Putting the metal on the anvil, the dwarf with tears in his eyes shouted that he would make the best lockpick, to which the Lord of Shadows laughed loudly. At this time, a new notification popped up in front of the guy, saying that the memories were over and he got a new skill. When the guy came to himself, he thought that the Lord was still a madman. He robbed the dragon for some kind of lockpick. How did such a crazy person become a Shadow Lord in general? Dismissing these thoughts, the guy decided to test his new skill. After calling the skill window, the guy found the right skill and soon a new notification popped up in front of the guy, talking about a new skill called Autopsy, which was a passive skill. In the description of the skill, it was said that the ability allows you to open locks. At this stage he can only open with the help of special tools. The available tools in his hand are a non-breaking lockpick. Surprised to notice that only items related to the autopsy would go, he began to close the notification and thought that there would probably be stages giving other opportunities. Leaving the tent, the guy decided that it would be necessary to test his ability. Grinning maliciously, he decided to clean out all the safes in the city. At this time, in the ruins, a warrior with a red cloak approached the crypt and, seeing a recess there, thought that the slab probably needed to be put there. Having put the stove there, the guy said that he would try. The stove lit up and released light in all directions, which caused the guy to recoil, exclaiming in surprise. Soon, a bow appeared in that place, over which a notification floated, saying that this was the bow of the first hunter and it was sealed. The surprised man wondered how he could remove the seal, because this is an unusual bow. The bow lit up with a bright light and a new notification popped up in front of the guy, saying the bow of the first hunter wants to test it. The guy has to go to the land where it all started and prove that he is worthy. In the next notification, it was said that the descendants of the clan themselves would check whether he was suitable. The guy wondered about this tested and about the lands where it all started, and seeing a notification asking him that he wants to return to the initial lands and proceed to the test or not. The guy looking at this notification said that this quest seems to be a long one. Clutching his head in exasperation, he wondered how much longer he would be running back and forth. At the same time in the city of Patron, Luke jumped from one roof to another, from one wall to another, and when he reached one house, he found a safe. Immediately, a new notification surfaced in front of the guy, warning him that he had entered someone else's house without permission and therefore his level of notoriety had increased. Looking around, the guy thought that he would still use the skill of a fake identity, so let the notoriety at least grow to heaven. Deciding that there was no one, the guy took out his master key and sat down next to the safe, said it was time to open it too. When he wanted to open the safe, a hologram of a skeleton key suddenly appeared in front of the guy and showed him exactly how to do it. Seeing this, the guy wondered what he only needed to repeat and then did as the hologram did. Following the instructions, he turned the lockpick and immediately a new notification popped up in front of the guy, saying that the first stage of the autopsy was successful. The guy, delighted with this, looked at the new notification, saying the experience has grown and his autopsy skill has improved. Smiling rather, the guy thought that it looks like he can even gain experience like this. It was very convenient. Opening the safe, the guy wondered what was inside and was surprised to see that there was only some kind of cloak inside. Taking it, he thought that he had not found anything interesting. When he took the blue raincoat, a new notification popped up in front of the guy, saying that he had stolen an item belonging to someone. A new notification immediately surfaced, informing the characteristics of the profession. He gets experience points for each theft committed and all his skills related to theft are improved. The surprised guy wondered that this is also considered theft. Smiling maliciously, he noticed that he was still lucky. After the raincoat, the guy took out a piece of paper from the safe asking what it was. It was written in the paper that the third subject was refused. The experiment was impossible, so the termination is confirmed. The guy wondered what kind of experiment this was. Looking at the piece of paper, the guy thought that it looked like some kind of report, but he didn't understand a word. Turning around, he decided to go when another safe is open. Suddenly, a new notification popped up in front of the guy, talking about a system alert. The guy asked with displeasure what it was and immediately a new notification with a message from his younger sister popped up. He was given the choice to reply or reject, as well as reply later or send a message. The surprised guy wondered what Mira wanted to talk about and clicked on the message and answered her. Mira wrote that he would be near his house tomorrow, so she asked him if he would pick her up. The guy asked why she came, to which she replied that there was nothing special. She made an appointment with a friend and thought he could help her look around, since she was coming. Seeing this, the guy thought that it sounded good and sent a message asking his sister that she was not meeting a friend here because of him. The girl wrote that it was a coincidence, to which the guy once again asked her if she was telling the truth. The girl said that if in this world you can't trust the words of your only younger sister, then what can you do at all? Seeing this message, the guy thought that she could come up with something plausible. The guy smilingly asked her when to approach him, to which she asked him to be at the bus station at 14. And the guy replied that he would. Smiling, the guy made the chat disappear thinking that it was at 2, so he still has a lot of time. But in the meantime he has to continue stealing, because he has a lot of work. Going through the window into the room of some house, the guy immediately received a notification saying that he entered someone else's house without permission and his level of notoriety increased. Even despite the notification, the guy began to open the safe and when he succeeded, a new notification immediately appeared saying that the first level safe was opened, his experience increased, and the skill of opening improved. There were few things in the safe, a bag, some documents, and some piece of paper. When he took these things, a new notification immediately surfaced, saying that he had stolen 2 silver coins and personal documents. Taking out that piece of paper, he read that it says that 4 healthy men are needed for the 4th experiment. After leaving the house, he immediately climbed up the wall to the top and ran in the other direction. Reaching the railing, he smiled and bent straight into the sky and was illuminated by the light of the moon. The next day the sky was clear, and the sun warmed the soul. At the bus station, next to one of the columns, leaning on him, the guy was waiting for someone thinking about where she was and looking at the phone. Soon a cheerful voice was heard telling her brother that she was here. There were 2 girls there, one cheerful with a bento in her hand, and the other shamefacedly hovering behind her. It was Yu Xiaoquu's young sister. Surprised, the guy noticed that her friend was already with her. Approaching him, Mira asked the guy how long he had been waiting, to which he replied that he had just come. Smiling, the guy asked his sister what she had said about this friend, to which she smiled broadly and said that it was so. At this time, her friend shrank hiding behind her. The girl, smiling, said that they had known each other for a long time, but hadn't seen each other for a while, and then a chance turned up, so she decided to introduce them. Her friend, confused, completely hid behind her. The guy, surprised, pointed to himself and asked that she wanted to introduce them. Smiling, the girl said that her friend also plays Agas and she needs help, so she thought that it would not be superfluous to introduce her to such an expert. Smiling, the guy said that his help was expensive, to which the girl, holding out boxes of bento, said that they had brought food, so he should agree. After looking at her friend, the girl asked Conile to meet her brother. She embarrassedly came out from behind a friend and greeted the guy saying that she was a Conile. When the guy saw her, he thought that it looked like he had seen her somewhere, who she was, and then comparing the girl with his memories, the guy realized that she looked very much like the rabbit he had robbed. Yes, Conile in August was known as a rabbit. Recoiling, the guy remembered her because she had an electric. Looking at the confused girl and the smiling sister, he wondered why she was here. This is not good, because the girl most likely guessed that it was he who stole the electro. When he came to, he decided to calm down first. Smiling, he held out his hand and said that he was glad to meet. Then he introduced himself as Yu Seok-woo and the eldest to take the worlds. Smiling, he thought that the girl did not recognize him, so he should pretend to be a stranger. To the surprise of the guy, his sister immediately happily told her friend that she also said that her brother was very well versed in Agas. She smiled and asked if he was really that cool. Inside, screaming in panic, the guy was offended by his sister. It was very bad, because the girl can guess. Putting his hand on his sister's shoulder, the guy scratched his head and smiling stupidly told her that he had an important matter. Could he go? To which she asked what he was about. The guy was thinking that he needed a pair of legs, and seeing this moment, the girlfriend of the girl asked him that he was a hatch. Smiling stupidly, the guy did not answer anything, but the girl, delighted, asked the question again. Mira was surprised and asked a friend that she knew his brother, to which the guy scratched his cheek, said with uncertainty that he was not sure what to remember her. This struck Conile and she sullenly asked for forgiveness. Her eyes filled with tears and she plaintively said that they had only met once, so she asked for forgiveness that she was imposing. Seeing this, the guy paler thought that this was not the case, and then hearing and seeing the gloomy and murderous look and voice of his sister, he looked at her in fear, and sweating all over. The girl with a gloomy look told Tom to explain everything to his sister, from start to finish, and he has to do it now. Turning pale, the guy thought that he had hit. After a while they were already sitting in the house. Mira, smiling at her friend, said that how small the world is. She couldn't even think that they had already met in the game. It's so strange. Conile, also smiling, said that she was also surprised. Irritably tightening the coke, the guy asked his sister that now they had clarified everything, to which he waved off and asked his brother for forgiveness. And then, smiling, she added that her brother just had such a past that she was already used to assuming the worst. Because of his sister's words, the guy spat out a coke, which he did not have time to swallow, turning pale. The interested Connell asked about the guy's past while he was coughing. His sister indifferently said that he often offended people and knocked everything out of them, but the guy managed to shut up his sister in time, smiling awkwardly. The guy immediately asked his sister that she seemed to be very talkative today. Smiling, the guy then asked his sister's friend that her name was Connell. Then he allowed her to address him by name. The girl smiled, nodded and said she would be glad. Smiling, the guy thanked Connell for being friends with his sister, to which the girl said that it was not worth it, because she should thank him. Mira looked at her friend with a question, but she smiled and said that Luke, that is, Yu Seok-woo, helped her a lot. The guy drinking a coke with surprise asked, that was it all like that? The girl nodded and said that he had helped a lot in the Forest of Trials. The girl grabbed one hand for the other, which Mira noticed. Connell bowed her head, smiling sadly and said that she could not cope with her role, and she was ashamed, because she was only in the way. She immediately began to remember those moments and said that then Yuzu still held out his hand to her and he was very kind to her, and it was thanks to him that she was able to survive. Crossing her fingers and squeezing them, the girl thanked Yu Seok-woo. The guy nodded awkwardly. The girl panicked, said that she wanted to give him her weapon, but it disappeared. It certainly hit the guy, and he remembered that he has it now. Smiling stupidly, the guy could only scratch his head. Worried, Mira told her that she probably should complain to support. Shaking her head, the girl said that she probably lost it herself. Chest a hair, the guy thought that if it was someone else, and not a friend of Mira, he would not feel guilty, but of course he could not confess to the theft. Crossing his arms, the guy was thinking, and at this time the girl looked at him and said that he was free to talk to her, because she thought it would be rude to call him by his full name. Playing with her fingers, the girl asked confusedly if she could call him brother. Smiling, the guy agreed, which made the girl very happy. Satisfied, she clapped her hands and thanked her brother Seok-woo. Seeing this, the guy thought that she was not too easy on the rise, and Mira looked at her friend with a question. Mira, grinning maliciously, turned her head and asked her brother if he hadn't noticed anything. The guy asked her what she was talking about, what the girl wanted to answer, but then the phone rang. Standing up, the girl told Mira that she would answer the call. The girl released her friend. At this time, the guy asked his sister what he should have noticed, to which she anxiously asked that he really did not notice. At this time, Connell was fiddling with her smartphone in a panic, and seeing her boyfriend shook his head negatively. The girl said that it was disgusting, because Connell would have a hard time, and began to drink from a glass. The guy looked at his sister uncomprehendingly, and she suddenly realized something, looked at her brother and asked what it meant. He was somewhere near the city of Patron. To which the guy said that it was. Smiling, the girl raised her finger, said that it was super, and asked her brother to play August with her. The surprised guy asked her if she had been playing for a long time, to which she replied that she used to play with Connell. He won't refuse. The guy reluctantly asked about playing together. The girl immediately looked at him gloomily, asking if he really didn't want to, so he was playing with Connell, but he refused to play with his own sister. In a panic, the guy gave a thumbs up and said that he would be happy to play with her. The girl, smiling broadly, said that she knew it. At this time, Connell returned and asked for forgiveness for making them wait, to which the girl said that everything was fine. The girl stood up and said that she was just in time, and went up to her friend and hugged her shoulder. Connell looked at her with a question, to which the girl asked her brother to give Connell a number. The girl is excited by the action of her friend, and the guy, however, also wondered why he would do this. Mira smiled and said it was just a number. Connell looked at her friend and asked confusedly why it was so unexpected, but the girl said that she would be able to join him as a friend. Sighing, the guy thought that it was annoying, of course, but she was friends with his sister. Reaching out to the girl, the guy said that he would give his number, to which the excited girl immediately held out her smartphone. Smiling, the guy wrote something that the girl looked at with impatience. The guy handed back the smartphone, to which the girl thanked him. Looking at a satisfied friend, Mira thought that spring looks like it's coming. After a while, the guy saw off two girls near the buses. Smiling, he asked those to take care of themselves, to which Mira grinned and said that it was nice to see her brother's face after so long. Connell also thanked her brother Sakyu for showing the neighborhood, saying that there was no problem. The guy turned around and added that he would go. Mira told him to be careful, and then added that it was for the sake of the Connell. The surprised girl asked what her friend was talking about, to which she asked, in response, what she thought about her brother. The girl looked at the guy walking with fatigue and said, smiling and slightly embarrassed, that he was kind and polite. Mira asked with interest what else there was, and the friend smiled and said that she would like to have such an older brother. Slapping her forehead, the girl mentioned God, which caused her friend to look at her with a question. Some time after the light of immersion, the guy began to appear in August in one of the alleys. Raising his head, the guy noticed that the window was open again. Apparently this is a great day for a robbery. Smiling, the guy called the inventory, saying that first he should understand why these records are needed at all. Yesterday he spent almost the whole day breaking into safes and stealing items. Often he came across mysterious reports in which there were different things. One mentioned a fourth subject. Then there was a necrosis and the experiment failed. There was also an eighth subject who was captured in Area A. Another said that it was easier for them to catch subjects in the D area. These records told about some strange experiment. At first the guy didn't attach any importance to this, but then he read something interesting. Strong male subjects were needed for the experiment. If they need men, then they are experimenting on people, and this is happening somewhere in Patron. But how they catch people alive? In the middle of the street, it is hardly possible to drag someone away. There are too many eyes for this. It seems there are some hidden ways. The guy could not understand, because there was little information. Turning around with determination, the guy decided to thoroughly search the area and find evidence. Bending down on the wall, the guy went into the house and immediately received a warning. A new notification popped up in front of the guy, saying that he had entered someone else's house without permission. After landing, he looked at an empty house, and seeing that there was nothing there, he sighed that it was empty again and turned around and decided to go to another house. Suddenly he heard a rumble and turned to listen. After that, he immediately pressed himself to the floor, thinking about what kind of sound it was. He definitely heard something under the floor. Listening, he heard the sound of feet and got up and realized that someone was walking below. Raising his head, he saw a hatch leading down and approached him suspiciously. Looking at the open hatch, the guy grinned maliciously and decided to check it out. Immediately, a new notification popped up in front of the guy, saying that he had found a hidden passage for the first time. A secret path was discovered in someone's house on the territory of Patron M. It is not known how the passage was created, and where it leads, it is also not known. Going down, the guy saw a new notification saying that he should study everything himself. Going down the stairs, the guy carefully looked around and, seeing no one, grinned, thinking that this was definitely a secret way. It was the first time he had seen such a thing. The subjects were probably led here, which means that at the end there is probably a place where they are being held. The guy took out a torch and, looking along the way, decided to inspect this incredibly suspicious place. Grinning, he said that it smelled like secret experiments. Walking carefully through the darkness, the guy thought that the passage was longer than he expected. Irritated, he wondered how much further to go. Seeing a wall torch ahead, he also heard footsteps and therefore immediately threw the torch out, extinguishing it. Hiding behind a corner, he wondered what kind of people were there. Footsteps sounded in the darkness ahead, and after a while figures in dark cloaks appeared. The guy stayed in the shadows so that he would not be noticed by 3 figures with something dragging on the ground. Looking at them, the guy thought that they were some kind of creepy bastards. Noticing the bag, he decided that there must be a test subject. They've caught someone again. The guy cautiously coming out of the alley decided to quietly follow them. Suddenly there was a loud sound and a hand appeared from a hole in the bag. The guy seeing this asked, mentally, what the hell is going on here, and then hiding again thought that there really is a person there. Holding onto the pile, the guy thought that his heart was about to jump out of his chest. At this time, a voice was heard saying that the arm was sticking out. Another voice cursed and said that he would have to tie it up again. Immediately, a trembling voice was heard asking for help. The guy looked out and saw a familiar face in the bag. It was from him that the guy stole the lockpick. It was hard for Luke to keep track of him in the slums. And then the guy guessed something. Based on the information that he had, he assumed that they were taking test subjects in the slums. Lawlessness already reigns there, so no one will notice if people disappear. So it's easy for them to kidnap the subjects, so they continue their experiments. One of the men in raincoats said that they had spent a lot of time, so they should hurry up. Another said that this time they connected well. Soon they started walking. Seeing this guy cautiously came out thinking that they were leaving. Then, grinning maliciously, the guy wondered what was in the end, because he was very interested. August was the best full immersion game in the world. She received a lot of attention after the launch. Complete freedom of action, a variety of activities, ranging from combat, ending with non-combat like a cook or an artist. There is a vast world in August, a huge amount of content, and it also has many wonderful features, and perhaps all this is thanks to AI. In other words, artificial intelligence. AI is responsible for managing August. This system is incredibly similar to a sentient being, and the administration of August even made an official statement on this topic. Standing in front of dozens of cameras at the conference, the man said that at the heart of August is the core, which serves as an artificial intelligence with an ego. Pointing to the capsule, the man said that in other words, it was like a growing child. She thinks and works independently, developing all the time. The rover company made great efforts to ensure that this child grew steadily and therefore provided her with a comfortable environment. That was their role. A man after the conference walked down the corridor stroking the back of his head, saying that there was still so much to do. He didn't think he would be forced to speak at a press conference. Drinking from a glass, the man straightened his tie and soon reached the right place. Stopping in front of the door, the man said that it was all because of Young Ho Sop. He's always throwing his problems at him. When he was already sitting down in his seat, someone called him as the leader of the first group, Choi Myro, saying that he had received a call. The man asked what was with the report, and the Fox employee said that he would tell him everything now. After taking a sip of Young Ho Sop, he said that he was still at work today. At this time, a bespectacled man called him and turned around and greeted Kim saying, "Sick." The bespectacled man handed him a document, saying that these were files that he had asked to be put in order yesterday. Smiling, the man said that he had done a good job. Looking at the table, the man asked what so these are quests with a 3-level condition. The document stated that this was a list of undiscovered secret plot quests with level 3 or higher. Adjusting his glasses, the bespectacled man nodded, saying that these were quests of a secret plot, but he did not know much about them, to which the man replied that he did not know much about them either. Although the difficulty levels are exorbitant, is a person capable of such a thing? The bespectacled man pointed to one of the quests and said that he was the most important. After looking at the quest, the man began to read its description, which said that for the quest you need to find the secret royal organization Fog, complete 10 tasks and return to Patron. What kind of conditions are these anyway? The bespectacled man said that if at least one of these quests is completed, they will drown in daily work. They'll even have to get ready in the morning. In addition, the task of the secret plot also continues to accumulate. Laughing, the man said that these quests are almost impossible to complete. Even if you return to the starting city of Patron, the level of the environment will simply grow to match the level of the player. At this time, suddenly someone screamed, asking what the hell was going on and why so suddenly. The surprised man looked in the direction of the screaming man, around whom many people had already gathered. Approaching him, he asked what the noise was, to which he pointed at the screen and did not dare to say. Seeing this, the man shouted that if it was some small thing, he would fire everyone, but immediately saw that a secret plot quest had begun. The bespectacled man, seeing that it is RMT 1004 means, a surprised guy with a pale face asked how this was possible. He immediately leaned over to the employee and asked him when the quest started, and he said that it started 1 minute and 40 seconds ago. Squinting, the man asked if they had already learned the user's code, and the worker said with concern that they had not yet. Standing up, the man shouted for them to recognize him right away. Clutching the glass, the man with a dissatisfied look thought about what the hell was going on here. This quest should have been impossible. The man cursed everything and everyone because he was already busy, and now there would be twice as much work. What kind of jerk took the assignment at all? At this time, the same jerk cautiously peeked out of the alley of the underground tracks. Looking at these 3 people in raincoats, he thought that they were already on their way. He was bored of just following them, in which case he decided to use the skill, thereby entertaining himself. He immediately jumped from one shadow to another and approached the 3 figures using the search and thinking about what he had here. He chose Ramen as a target and found a notebook with 50 in his inventory. The surprised guy thought that usually during the search he is given full information about a non-player character. However, it didn't work with this guy. He decided to rob him. Besides, it looks like he didn't have anything else. Immediately, a new notification popped up in front of the guy, saying that the theft was successful, and a new notification appeared, saying that he was used to stealing and therefore the level of his profession as a thief increased, and the skill of theft increased. The theft skill has increased to 2. He enthusiastically accepted it and decided to check what had changed. Having called up the skill window, he chose theft, and immediately a new notification popped up in front of the guy, saying that his skill was theft of the 2nd level. And the description said that now he can steal at a great distance, and the chances of successful theft increase with certain abilities. The current abilities were agility and great luck. Seeing this description, the guy mentally shouted that it was damn great. Clenching his fist, he thought that it was cool that the distance had increased. Now his chances would be higher. Stealing will be incredibly easy. Finally, the men reached the door, and the one who was in front of everyone said that they had come. The guy thought that it was just in time, and immediately ducking towards the wall began to climb, and soon reached the ceiling directly above the men. The men looked around suspiciously but saw nothing. One of them asked that something was wrong, and the other said that it seemed to him that it was just his imagination. They went in the door, and after a while the guy landed side, saying that it was close. And then, smiling, the guy asked that those guys said they were in place. Clinging to the wall, he cautiously went in and looked at what they were doing here. He saw men in raincoats carrying sacks and loading them into some carts. The guy thought that this was crazy. There was just a huge number of test subjects. What kind of place is this? Looking at them, Luke thought that it looked like they were only taking the abducted away from here. And judging by the way they work, they are very careful. After the people in raincoats transported all the bags, a wall of boxes immediately began to be built behind him, and seeing this, the guy thought that they were pretending to be ordinary merchants transporting goods, and that's how they managed to hide their experiments. First they kidnap the poor, who no one will miss, then they drag them here by secret ways, and then they load them into carts, and from here the victims are taken somewhere. Is this the role of these people in this experiment, or are they just selling the subjects to real criminals? While the guy was thinking about all this, suddenly a voice was heard saying that some gentleman had arrived. The guy looked in surprise in that direction and noticed a crowd of people in raincoats who had gathered around someone who was emitting a creepy aura. Grinning, the guy realized that it looked like someone important had appeared, so it was his chance to slip through, and complaining about such a chance, he jerked off in that direction. A few jerks and he was already hiding closer behind the dungeon wall. Hiding, the guy thought that he should find out what kind of person this gentleman is. The guy hiding behind a stone wall saw that it was some kind of magician. Judging by the staff, and he was wearing a black robe with a hood that hid his face. The magician called someone named Mandak, and one of the people in cloaks came out and bowed and responded to the call. Looking at the trembling Mandaka, the magician, emitting a gloomy pressure with anger, asked about why they were late. Mandak, trembling, asked for forgiveness for this offense and said that the subject had managed to untie the rope, so they had to stop. Raising his hand, the magician with red eyes shouted at him to be silent, and then added that they were useless garbage. The Mandak, frightened and panicked, begged the master to spare him, but the magician, not listening to him, ordered him to shut up and began to collect dark energy around his palm. The surprised guy thought that it looked like this magician would do it, and the magician sent an aura towards the Mandaka, and that was enveloped by a dark flame. The poor guy in the raincoat begged to be left, but the flames soon hit him, and something green, like flames, splashed out of his mouth and eyes. Blazing after a while, the Mandak has already turned into a skeleton. Looking at this victim, the magician released a terrible aura and turned and looked at his subjects and shouted for everyone to listen to him. Anyone who allows them to succeed in the experiment will experience terrible pain, and then die. The novices immediately sat down on one knee and shouted that they were obeying their master. The guy hiding behind a stone felt all this thinking that his bad feeling was justified. He knew that something like this would happen. Remembering that terrible moment, the guy thought that their boss finally convinced him that they were experimenting on people. His magic was terrible. It's obvious that he got involved with some disgusting black magician. Looking around in search of a way out, the guy thought that of course there is a valuable item here, but he is not ready to deal with such fanaticism. When he started to descend, a system alert popped up and the guy wanted to read it, but immediately the magician, turning towards the stone where he was hiding, said that he felt someone's presence, and realizing that the guy did not know what to do. The magician said that he needed to check and called a few to follow him, which they did before bowing to him. Crouching down and pressing himself against a stone, the guy thought that he had always hated smart bastards. He needs to get out of here fast. In dissatisfaction, he decided to minimize the notification window first, and then he was surprised to read it with one eye and immediately wanted to think about something. Then decided that it could wait, he could figure it out later. He immediately called the inventory, and a window with inventory popped up in front of the guy, where there was thunder, money, a hood, and a torch. Looking at them, the guy was thinking about what he should use for a quick escape, and then he noticed people in raincoats carrying bags and grinned maliciously, thought that he had a great idea, which he would definitely do them with. Immediately, one notification after another began to pop up in front of the guy, informing him that he had used a torch, and in a second there were 3 torches in each of his hands. He laughed angrily, looking at his idea. After a while, people in cloaks heard a sound, and the one who was next to the magician turned around and saw the fire. With surprise, he shouted about what was going on here, and hearing him, the magician also turned around and saw a huge flame that consumed their shelter. One of the people in raincoats wondered how it happened and immediately looked at the other magician, asked about what was going on here. But the people in raincoats themselves wondered what was going on here. They ran towards the fire and shouted that they had problems. They had to put out the fire. Someone else shouted that the wagons were on fire and they had better remove them. And someone else asked what his colleague was talking about. They had better get the subjects out. The magician turned around in anger and shouted that they were all picked up by the darkness. People in raincoats saw that the magician was walking somewhere and looked at him, and he was using magic, thinking that the pest would regret what he had done, because he would revel in his death. Jumping out next to that stone, a magician with magic at the ready shouted that he was a bastard. The magician, releasing purple energy, jerked up next to the stone and shouted that he would brutally deal with this arrogant bastard. But when he was in the right place, he froze, not knowing what to do. Having dispelled the magic, he thought that it was really just his imagination. At this time, he heard something and sat down on his knee and touched the ground. Immediately, a voice was heard asking the magician if he needed help, and meanwhile, he noticed a shoe on the ground. One of the men in raincoats asked him what was the matter, and the magician got up, said that there was nothing, and then turning to the attendant, asked what they have lost, and he said that fortunately, everything was fine with the subjects. Only wooden boxes and carts were burned, and nothing serious. Smiling nastily, the magician said that since it was nothing serious, it was good. At this time, the flame was inflated, and people in raincoats were swarming next to it, carrying test subjects and boxes. Looking at this farce, the magician said that they would no longer use this place. They should rather load the subjects into the remaining wagons. In a panic, the servant asked what his master was talking about. If they abandon this path, it will become more difficult to transport the subjects. The magician turned around in anger and asked this idiot what he didn't understand at all. Someone was here. The man in the cloak recoiled, said what it meant, and the magician nodded, continued for him, saying that now the intruder knows about their secret ways. He probably understood what they were doing here, so it's dangerous for them to get stuck here again. Pointing this out, the magician ordered his assistant to inform others about it. He bowed and nodded to his master. Looking at the departing henchman, the magician said that he was still curious about who this unknown person was. At this time, the unknown himself was running away. Looking at the exit, the magician said whether it was a bastard loyal to the royal family, who always gives him problems, or it was an ordinary thief who happened to be here. Well, never mind. They will meet again soon, then he will find out. And after a while, the guy stood over the roof of one of the buildings and looked at the peaceful square with dozens of people. The guy, thinking about something, raised his head and looked at the huge estate right in front of him. There were still guards there, and seeing them, the guy thought that for such a small town, this is too serious security. It's strange. Taking out a book, the guy looked at him. If what he learned from him is true, then he has met the disciples of a black magician. They pretend to be residents of Patron, and they conduct experiments in the mansion of the owner of these lands. Come to think of it, isn't this book telling about all their weaknesses? A few hours ago he got out of that secret passage back into the house and, sighing with relief, immediately leaning on the wall of the room with a sigh, said that he almost died. Fortunately, he managed to escape, and he himself could have become their test subject. Then he remembered something and called up the notification window about the quest that came to him then. He should look. When he pressed the quest button, a new notification immediately popped up in front of the guy, talking about the secret quest Secret of Patron. The rank was not known, and the description said that he witnessed the preparation of black magicians for a secret experiment. What are they doing with the inhabitants of Patron? They need to be stopped. The description also said that he should now tell the royal family about what happened. He must go to the capital, and only there he will be able to get help. Immediately, a new notification surfaced informing about the conditions of the quest. He must personally visit the capital. He must tell the royal family about what is happening in Patron and also prove his words. The most important thing is that the rank of the quest was indicated by a question. Didn't that mean that the difficulty level of the quest was beyond? And to go from Patron to the capital, it's a long road. Besides, looking at the condition of the quest, he's a messenger or something. In dissatisfaction, hiding the description of the quest, he said that it was a complete mess. If he had time, he would go to the capital. Besides, how should he prove his words at all? He needs at least some real evidence. He just spent time on this quest. And then, as he was walking to the window, he remembered the proof. He had a book. He had already forgotten about her. This book will serve as a good proof. Immediately, a new notification popped up in front of the guy, saying that the condition to prove his words had been collected. The surprised guy recoiled, and immediately a new notification popped up in front of him, saying that he had fulfilled the last condition before the first one. The plot of the task has changed, and therefore the content of the task has also changed. The surprised guy wondered that it could not be that the plot and content had changed. He clicked on the quest again, and a full quest window unfolded in front of the guy. As before, it was a secret quest about the secret of a pattern with an unknown rank, but the description has changed. It was written there that black magicians impersonate the inhabitants of Patron. He found out that they use slum dwellers in their terrible experiments. The description also said that the place of the experiments is the mansion of Baron Balkans. It was a chance to get rid of the black magicians. He should go to the capital and report it, because only there will help him. The conditions also said that he should personally visit the capital, as well as tell the royal family about what is happening in Patron. The surprised guy wondered that the quest had really changed. The guy immediately noticed the main thing from the description, namely, that black magicians pose as residents of Patron, and that he found out that they use slum dwellers in their terrible experiments, as well as the fact that their place of experiments is the mansion of Baron Balkans. The surprised guy was in a stupor. Why are these experiments being conducted in the Baron's mansion? That's what the guy was asking. Closing the book, the guy said with regret that there was nothing about him here. After a while, a guy was already standing next to the Baron's mansion and looking at the high walls. Looking at them, he thought that, in any case, experiments are being conducted on people somewhere here. He can climb with the help of Parker and search the territory. He was standing with his hands in his waist, thinking that there are a lot of guards around and this is not good. He'd better wait until nightfall and sneak in here. When he turned around and started walking, he heard a shout telling Mr. Balkans to come out and not hide. The surprised guy turned in that direction. wondered what kind of screams they were and saw people shouting next to the guard formation. People shouted that the gentleman could not solve the problem on his own lands, and what Baron Balkans was so busy with then. They were shouting for the Baron to show up right away. Surprised by this turn, the guy wondered why these people are rioting. They seem to be residents of Patron. So many people gathered in front of the mansion to scold the Baron. This is very strange, because he did not remember such an event, which means that the guy, smiling maliciously, remembered his quest. This may be related to his quest. They were shouting on the street. People were on guard asking those who he was, were they deaf or something? They should call the Baron. Don't they hear the cries of the angry crowd? The crowd shouted that all this was happening because of Balkans, and therefore he should take responsibility. They take everything back, their freedom and their rights. People even started throwing stones and all sorts of garbage, and one of the stones hit the shield of one of the guards. Seeing this, one knight anxiously wondered why they were behaving like this. Turning around, the young man looked at Captain Kyle, saying that the situation had escalated and he should give the order. Captain Kyle, who was looking at all this with laziness and irritation scratching his head, said that all this annoyed him. Maybe they would just let them in. The young man, angry at his captain, shouted at him to think with his head. He must order them to stop them by force, to which the captain raised his hand and said that no violence was needed. The young man looked at him blankly and asked what he was talking about. The captain, seeing this calmly, said that they were obliged to protect Patron as well as every person living on these lands. They should be their strength and support. Seeing such a captain, the young man could only think that he was talking nonsense again. At this time, the guards were bored thinking about lunch and what they should do after work. Looking at the guy with a serious face, the captain told his deputy that they should be honest. The guy asked in perplexity what he was talking about, and the captain, looking at the townspeople, said that the deputy should understand why all this was happening. The problem is the Baron's orders. The guy said that the owner of the lands should be obeyed, to which the captain replied that, however, their master did not care about Patron. He was only concerned about night deliveries. Immediately the guy remembered those people and asked the captain what he thought about those bags that suspicious people in raincoats bring. The captain nodded and said that it was so. He doesn't even know what's inside. He even ate, but they didn't let him check. When he tried to enter the mansion, he was stopped and he was unable to investigate the case. The situation is murky and Braun's situation is getting worse. It is unlikely that the problem will solve itself. If everything is left like this, the residents will revolt. Then Patron will suffer a terrible fate. Suddenly, a sound attracted both the captain and the deputy captain, and they both looked in that direction. A voice came from there saying that Sir Kyle had done a good job, and Kyle, looking in the direction of the man, immediately greeted his master. A man with gray hair and beard asked the captain what the situation was, to which he replied that there had not been a direct collision yet, and the guards remained on the defensive. The Baron nodded to the captain and looked in the direction of the townspeople, and when they saw him, they immediately pointed at him with their finger, calling the brothers to look at the Baron who came out. Someone asked where he was, and someone pointed to the Baron. Baron Balkans, with a staff and an indifferent face, looked towards the residence. He was in his right, because he is the owner of Patron. Looking at the Baron, the guy wondered what is the owner of these lands. Suddenly the guy noticed something and looked more closely at his staff. Hadn't he seen this staff somewhere else, smiled before? At this time, one of the men shouted, saying that Baron Balkans had finally appeared. What has he been doing all this time? Why is he ignoring the problem until it came to this? Looking at the screaming man in a brown robe, the Baron smiled cordially, said that they had not seen the high priest for a long time, and then asked how he was doing. The man said that he did not have time for greetings, and pointing to the Baron immediately added that he explained himself. The Baron asked what kind of explanation he wanted, and the priest, dissatisfied, shouted for the Baron to stop pretending. Why does he turn a blind eye to the losses and complaints of merchants and residents of Patron? At least he understands how many months he ignored them. The slums have become a hotbed of evil. Because of these scoundrels, Patron is more dangerous every day. It was the Baron who asked to leave the slums alone. Now he has to explain himself. This revelation surprised the guy as well. Is the Baron just ignoring the riots in the slums? Immediately there were angry shouts from the crowd asking why Baron Balkans was silent. He should answer. The Baron, looking at this crowd with indifference, sighed listening to their cries for an explanation, and then smiled and said that shouldn't he take care of his people? He thought about the situation in the slums for a very long time. He saw that his people had been living on the streets for so long. They were starving, enduring cold and pain to last another day, so he thought how he could help them. Then the Baron looked down with sadness and added that it was his duty because he was the owner of the Patron. so they gathered supplies to improve life in the slums. Then Captain Kyle remembered those unknowns and nodded to himself, thinking that he now understood. The Baron continued, saying that he really was the cause of concern, but then he promised that he would not allow this in the future. The Baron asked them to wait a little longer, he would definitely solve this problem. The priest immediately shouted that he did not believe the Baron, interrupting him, and added that these poor people were not worse than maggots. They cause riots in the slums, get into fights, and bring only troubles. They are a disease that spoils the city, and therefore the Baron should not be so kind to them. And then the priest turned to the people and shouted that they had already turned a blind eye to their actions, and shouted that it was time to punish the criminals. Everyone immediately supported the priest by shouting along with him. Pointing at them, the priest asked the Baron that now he understands what they want. With such garbage, you need to be harsh, not soft. Therefore, the Baron must make a wise decision. Looking at all this skirmish, the guy thought that he does not want to believe in it, but he has confirmation that experiments are being put in the mansion, because it was said in the description of the quest. This is his chance to get rid of the black magicians. The landlord ignored the slums, and his staff is very similar to that magician. Mr. Baron seems to be the master of those magicians. The Baron raised his hand in a panic, stopping the residents, and seeing this, the guy waved away his thoughts and thought that this was a secret plot and therefore everything could not be so obvious. There must be a sharp turn. Grinning, the guy decided to kill time until the evening and search a couple of shops. Humming a tune, he was walking along his path, and then someone with a stone in his hand passed by him, and then this man with a beard and mustache, having got into the crowd, looked at the Baron and clutching the stone threw it right into the Baron's forehead, which caused him to recoil. Seeing this, the captain of the knights and the deputy of the knights immediately turned to him with concern, and he clutched his forehead. At this time, the guy turned around in surprise, looking at the fact that the Baron fell to his knees clutching his forehead. The priest, also seeing this, anxiously asked if the Baron was all right. Residents saw blood on the forehead of the landowner and immediately asked with concern about who threw the stone. Captain Kyle immediately shouted that there was a man threatening the Baron's life somewhere. Kyle ordered the guards to grab everyone and find the culprit. The deputy shouted for them to protect the Baron. The guards immediately rushed at the fleeing crowd. People running away in panic shouted that they did not do it and shouted, but the guards did not listen to them, grabbing everyone. Immediately, the deputy captain shouted to his master to come here, and under the protection of the captain, they took the Baron to the castle. The guards grabbed the people were those, and meanwhile the gates began to close. The guards ran screaming that they were running away, and they had to catch them. Meanwhile, the guy was looking at all this with surprise. He turned his head in the direction of Stenny and smiled, saying that it looked like he wouldn't have to wait. The sky was clear, and the walls of the estate were not guarded by anyone. The guy using this bent towards the walls, and grabbing the same used the skill, and following the hologram after a while found himself over the walls. Seeing that there was no one, the guy thought that it was great, and then smiling, he bent up and said that he should not miss this time. The guy jumped from the top of the wall to the ground and landed. He saw that a new notification appeared in front of him, talking about some kind of recreation of the territory. Soon the notification was fully revealed and a window appeared in front of the guy, saying that he had the ability to recreate the territory profession and he was of a low level. The description said that he had invaded the territory of an important NPC, and then added that only thieves can recreate the territory. Looking at this, the guy did not understand what it was and reread more carefully everything that was said there. Scratching his head, the guy wondered about the thieves. A new notification popped up in front of the guy, showing the level of suspicion, which was now 0. Under this there was an explanation, in the form of status and explanation. In the status, it was said that he was not found, and in the description, it was said that when he gets into someone's field of vision, the level of suspicion will increase. The guy looked at the string of messages and windows with surprise. Immediately, a new window with a mini-map popped up in front of the guy, showing his location and enemies in the form of accurate. The surprised guy looking at this mini-map couldn't help but notice that this thing is very interesting. At the same time, he noticed that he was marked with blue, which means that the red dots are an NPC. Although he was sure, he wanted to make sure. At this time, the castle gates were closing, and the guy, hiding behind one of the trees, was sitting looking at the deputy of the knights, who was supporting the Baron, who was clutching his face and walking forward. One of the guards was following them. The guy seeing this looked at the mini-map and nodded to himself. As he thought, the mini-map shows not only the location, but also the nearest enemies. Smiling maliciously, the guy jerked off to the side, thinking that if the map does not lie, then there is no one nearby except these guys. He must get into the mansion faster. At this time, the Baron was sitting by the fountain, and a guard and a deputy captain were standing nearby. Immediately, the captain of the guard himself ran towards them and, seeing the Baron, asked if he was all right. The Baron clutched at the wound and said that nothing serious had happened. It's just a scratch. Captain Kyle, with concern, said that the Baron should receive treatment and rest, to which the Baron nodded and got up from his seat and said that he was fine and would go himself, and they could return to their duties. The Baron's words disturbed the deputy and the guard, but they did not say anything. But Captain Kyle said that he would take the gentleman to the mansion. The captain, seeing that the Baron stopped, added that he might feel dizzy due to blood loss, to which the Baron said that he had said that he was fine. The captain added with concern that the Baron was only feeling well because of the adrenaline. To prevent fainting, he should let him go with him. Captain Kyle was interrupted by the Baron and, turning with a gloomy face, asked how much more he had to repeat. He made it clear that he would go himself. Trembling from the Baron's gloomy gaze, the captain of the knights bowed his head with a pale face and asked for forgiveness from his master. Seeing the condition of the subordinate, the Baron said that he should accept his apology because the Baron was rude, and then added that the knights should take care of the territory, to which he inclined his head and nodded, saying that he would do it. When the Baron left, the guard asked Kyle how he was, and the deputy told Tom not to worry. The captain himself looked after the Baron with clenched teeth, crossing his arms over his chest. The captain thought that he could not believe that the Baron was not letting them into the mansion even now. They even have a reason. Looking at the estate, the captain wondered if the Baron was hiding something that could not be shown to the guards. What is the secret of the mansion? At this time, Luke was walking through the castle, thinking that the Baron was connected with magicians or not, or experiments were being conducted here or not. He only wanted to rob the mansion. Smiling, he thought that he should steal everything he could before the guards came. Not forgetting to hide from time to time, he rapidly advanced into the depths of the mansion. Stopping in one of the corridors, the guy wondered why there was no one here. This is certainly good for him, but something was wrong here. There must be at least someone inside. There are so many guards outside. Suddenly the guy noticed the basement and immediately began to go down it, thinking that the basement turned out to be very deep. Finally reaching the end, he saw a metal door. Touching the door, he hoped that it would not be a waste of time, and when the surprised guy opened the door, he saw a corridor with bars. Of course, he immediately thought of prison. Suddenly a new notification popped up saying the blue card was updated. New designations have appeared. The guy looked at the map with shock, seeing solid red dots on both sides. It was completely crazy because there were a lot of people here. Immediately, a notification began to pop up, saying that the level of suspicion was increasing. Seeing this, the guy pressed himself against one of the cameras, and then suddenly a hand grabbed his shoe and the guy clenched his teeth and realized that this was a trap. Calling everything and everything, the guy saw that several more hands appeared behind him. The guy saw several hands reaching out from behind the cameras and realized that his situation was shitty. He immediately took out the thunder dagger and shouted that he wouldn't let those bastards do it. He wanted to pierce his hand, but when he heard that he would not be harmed, he stopped a millimeter away from his hand. The voice said that they are not criminals and they were kidnapped and kept here. The guy's hands were released and he turned around in surprise, asking who they were and at the same time thrusting the dagger into the sheath. The hands disappeared and a man appeared out of the darkness of the cell, asking if he remembered him. The surprised guy saw that bald thief. After a while, the guy was already told what had happened, and looking at this bald man in the cell, the guy pointed at him and said that if you believe his words, then all these people locked up with him were abducted from the slums. And there were 3 other people next to the thief. 1 old man and 2 men who looked over 30, looking suspiciously in that direction, and asked that the criminals took the rest of the victims in that direction. The bald thief nodded, saying that he was right. The guy put his hands on his waist, asked about when they were taken away, and bald said that quite recently. The guy, looking in that direction, thought that if this petty thief is not lying, then there is a laboratory somewhere. Smiling maliciously, the guy decided that he had a lot of time for fun. Then turning to the beggars, the guy thought that he had to understand something first. The black magicians took the abducted ones with them, so right now they are busy conducting an experiment. Then there are evil wizards everywhere. The guy frowned at the bald man, and asked if he knew at least approximately how many kidnappers there were, to which the petty thief said he had no idea. Gritting his teeth, the guy couldn't help but think that this idiot was useless. Then, looking in that direction, the guy admitted that there were a lot of enemies there. How then can he rob them without getting caught in the process? Is there even a way? Suddenly, a bald man called him and asked the guy if he could open the lock. The guy looked suspiciously at the lock, and the bald man, rubbing his hands and sweating, nodded asking for it. The guy thought that he had a lockpick, so he could, and then looking at the bald man, he said that he could, which pleased him. The prisoners happily thanked him, saying that they would be very grateful, but after the guy stretched out his hand and smiling broadly, said that but first they had to pay for the service. From this behavior, the people in the cell were shocked and the bald man panicked, asked if the guy really wanted money. Luke looked at the bald man with displeasure, said that of course he wanted to. He was not their benefactor. If you get help, then he should be kind enough to generously pay for his hard work. The bald man panicked, said that but they had no money. They were kidnapped and dragged here. The guy, hearing this, smiled broadly and said that then he went. Seeing this behavior, the bald man in a panic grabbed the bars and shouted that the guy did not leave and help them. Does he have no mercy at all or something? The guy, dissatisfied with the screams, told Tom to shut up and be quieter. He should just ask for someone else's help. At this time, a voice shouted that they were too noisy. Hearing this, the guy grabbed his mouth in a panic, and then calling the inventory began to look at his items and immediately saw the raincoat. After a while, footsteps rang out in the corridor and someone grumbling said that he had to go here to check on them. Walking through this place, a man in a raincoat asked what they wanted to put in their great experiment, or something, but the experiment will lead to a revolution. Then the man looked up and noticed another man in a raincoat and asked what he was doing here. The guy silently pointed to the bars with prisoners and the old man, realizing, asked him that he was checking the condition of the subjects, to which his colleague nodded. The disgruntled old man told him to go and do real work and not waste time on it, and then turned around and left. The guy turned towards the prisoners and said that he would pull them out later, but for now they should be silent. Walking behind the old man, the guy grinned, thinking that he had come up with a great idea. He managed to avoid problems. He would never have thought that the cloak he would steal from the safe would have the same color and tailoring as the clothes of black magicians. After that, the guy looked at the window of suspicion, which stopped at 48%. The level of suspicion is not growing, and I did well to keep the cloak in the inventory. Suddenly, the old man said that, could he ask for a favor? Turning around, the old man said that he had been having problems with his back lately. Could the guy help him carry it? The guy nodded and thought that this was his chance to walk alone. The old man pointed to the cage, telling the guy to take this animal. The guy looked at the cage, inside which a raccoon was sitting trembling. The old man said that the raccoon is amazing. And then the old man grinned and asked the guy that he had never seen a raccoon using magic. The surprised and delighted guy turned to the raccoon sitting in the cage with a plaintive look, thinking that it turned out to be a magical beast. Smiling, the guy quietly said that if he sold it, he would earn a lot of money. Suddenly the guy noticed that the raccoon was shaking his head, and thought that this raccoon really understands human speech. Slapping the guy on the arm, the old man said that he trusted the animal to him, and then turned around and went forward. The guy looked at the animal again and thought that this old man was quite irresponsible. Smiling, the guy thought that he needed to teach this old man a lesson in theft and used the skill by choosing Rochef as a target. Immediately, a new notification popped up in front of the guy, saying a search was underway, and the guy instantly stole 5 silver coins with a 72% chance. A new notification popped up saying the theft was successful. The guy did not stop there and immediately conducted another search and found a low-level magic scroll with an 85% chance again used the theft, and immediately a new notification popped up in front of the guy, saying the theft was successful. With this, he will get 30 silver. The guy didn't stop there either, and after searching the old man, he found 3 more things with high percentages. Fairy pollen with 83%, black crystal with 87%, and mermaid tears with 90%. Immediately, several notifications surfaced in front of the guy, saying that the theft was successful. The surprised guy thought that this old man was a walking chest. Suddenly, a new notification popped up in front of him and he froze, because the color of the window was measured, and it said that an unidentified object was found. Seeing that the window turned orange, the guy thought that he had been read before. Overjoyed, he thought that perhaps he had found a high-level item. Smiling maliciously, the guy thought that he just had to steal it. The raccoon witnessed this expression, which made him open his mouth wide. A notification popped up in front of the guy, saying an unidentified object is recognized, and a new notification immediately popped up, showing progress that reached 10% in a few seconds. The guy followed the old man, and when the progress reached 59%, they reached a room where a lot of dark magicians gathered. And there was also that main magician. A man was chained up next to the wall in a red circle. Luke didn't pay any attention to all this. He looked at the progress with expectation. And that's when someone was talking to the main magician. A new notification popped up in front of the guy, saying that the recognition was successful and he identified the item. The delighted guy was screaming internally. Suddenly his joy was noticed and they asked him what he was happy about, and the guy got stupefied. And then he heard a scream, noticed that they had nailed in the right place, and wondered in surprise when they even came. The guy picked up the animal, thought that he needed to hide until he was discovered. But this time, the old man said that the guy was just happy that he was helping the master in a great cause. The magician nodded in surprise. After that, the old man took out a green ball and said that he had brought it for the magician. The magician thanked him for Trudy, but the guy was in despair because a notification appeared next to the green ball that it was an essence with a heroic rank. The guy in despair shouted that this magician was a thief. He stole the item he was going to steal. In the description of the essence, it was said that it was possible to understand the purpose of this item only after using it. The guy with discontent began to squeeze the cage, thinking that he had missed an item with a heroic rank, how much it cost. Meanwhile, the raccoon in the cage was trembling all over, feeling the mood of the guy. At this time, suddenly a new notification popped up in front of the guy, saying that he had fulfilled the condition for inspecting the mansion. And then a new notification came, saying that the plot of the task had changed, as well as the content of the task had also changed. The guy looked at the quest window again, the description of which said that he had penetrated into the dungeon under the mansion and studied it. He found evidence confirming that the diabolical experiment is being conducted by the leader of the Black Magicians, Regulus. Therefore, there is no more time to waste. He must punish the evil Black Magicians. The condition of the new task was to defeat the leader of the Black Magicians, Regulus. Seeing this, the guy inwardly shouted that this was not what he should be doing now. At this time, the old man, smiling, told the gentleman to start the experiment, but the magician said that they would conduct it tomorrow. The surprised old man asked the magician why, and he grabbed his face, said that he was not well today, and then ordered them to leave, giving the essence back into the old man's hands. Smiling, the old man asked if they could stay and study the results today, to which the magician gave permission. The magicians immediately started talking. Someone said that he would go to rest, and someone asked a friend what he would do. Some said they would stay here, while others have already started to leave. The guy turned around and said that he would go too, to which the old man frowned and asked him that he was running away, to which the guy snuggled up to the raccoon. And the old man smiled and said that then he should take the raccoon back and come back when he had a rest. The guy looked at the old man from under his brows, thinking that later he would deal with their master, but in the beginning he had to take his treasure. Smiling maliciously, he said he would make a mess. After a while, all the magicians came out, and those who were imprisoned in the cells saw it and wondered that they had all left. They immediately remembered that guy and said that he betrayed them and ran away. But you shouldn't be surprised, he looked like a jerk from the very beginning. He's a real villain. Immediately, the bald man took the guy's side and said that they did not know him, and added that he was not a bad person, which confused the other three. But then the bald thief clenched his fists and shouted that he was the worst bastard in the world. He threatened him with a dagger, stole all his belongings, and even kicked him out of the house. Do the prisoners now understand what he did to him? It is unlikely that such a person will keep his word. While the thief was talking, his cellmates were already turning pale and looking at the guy who was standing behind them gloomily. And when he raised his voice, the bald man recoiled in fright, hoping for God. The guy put the cage on the ground and asked him why he was so surprised. And then, looking at the bald man, he asked that he had insulted him. But the bald man immediately raised his hands and shouted about how he could. All gloomy, pointing at himself, he asked about what and who was the worst bastard in the world then. It looks like Baldy doesn't want to run away from here anymore. The bald man immediately recoiled, turning pale, and then, together with others, clasped his hands in supplication, shouted to be forgiven, and even said that the guy could kill him. Others immediately asked the guy not to do it. The guy laughed, said that he was joking, and opening the lock, he said that he would release the raccoon, which surprised him. Looking at the animal, which looked at him with feeling, the guy thought that at first he wanted to sell it. But the raccoon is not an item, so it will not work to put it in the inventory. And then turning to the prisoners, he smiled and said that now they are. The delighted prisoners thanked the guy from time to time, and the guy, opening the lock, said that of course he would let them out, but they should help him. At this time, several magicians remained in the place of experiments and suddenly they heard a trampling. The old man turned around and was shocked to see a huge number of angry prisoners. The bald man pointed at them and shouted that the guys were theirs. The angry prisoners ran towards the magicians, shouting that they had captured them and in return they would capture those and beat them. The magicians shouted in panic that there were a lot of these guys and they should call the master. One of the magicians shouted that they were idiots, they had to run away. Immediately, people reached the magicians and the fight began. There were magicians, but the old man with the green ball was standing behind and did not know what to do. Angry, he clenched his teeth and shouted about how this garbage dares and began to concentrate magic, saying that he would kill everyone. But then the dagger flew straight towards his hand and crashed into him, releasing lightning, which struck the magician and tore off his cast. The magician howled plaintively, and then a kick from a guy who managed to shout for this freak to give his treasure right in his face. The old man fell, for one thing missing the green ball from his hands, and the guy, seeing this, grinned maliciously. The old man shouted in fear that life could not be like that. But the guy, smiling, raised his leg and, saying goodbye to the old man, kicked him. The magician in despair shouted that the guy did not do this, but he only grinned maliciously and said goodbye to the old man, and his naga crashed into the old man's face. Brushing the dust off his hand, the guy smiled and said that the old man was a weakling. The guy was even sorry. Smiling, the guy looked at his green shiny ball and said that his baby had been waiting for him for a long time. Picking it up, the guy was surprised to notice that the ball looked like a diamond. Maybe he's the only one of his kind. Even its color is unusual. Immediately, a new notification popped up in front of the guy, saying that he had received the item. Behind this notification, a new notification appeared saying that he had received an item belonging to someone and the item had incredible value. 3 new notifications immediately surfaced, saying that his level had been raised. The guy, surprised by this turn, said that it was cool, because his level had increased 3 times in a row. Is it really because of the high rank of the item? At this time, a new notification surfaced, saying that additional information about the subject had been received. The guy, after reading this window, said that now it looks like he will be able to find out what kind of object it is. And then he opened his mouth wide in surprise. An orange notification popped up in front of the guy, saying that it was the essence of poison and he had a heroic rank. The description said that the sphere contains a concentrated poison that is being produced all the time. The guy picked up on the ball, noticed a new notification saying that the object was tied to it, and then the system asked him if he wanted to use poison. Behind this notification, a new notification surfaced, saying that the item would disappear after use, and at the end a window with a choice between yes and no popped up. The guy remarked with regret that the item seemed to be attached to the player, so he would not be able to sell it. Waving away, the guy decided that there was no longer only from him and pressed yes. A notification popped up saying that the guy had used the essence of poison and the ball began to crack. The ball began to glow with an aura and the guy recoiled when the monster's face flew into the sky. Immediately after, a number of new notifications surfaced, informing that the essence of poison penetrates into his body, and it merges with the guy's body. And finally, the last notification informed the guy that he had received a hidden skill called Essence of Poison. Surprised by this revelation, the guy wanted to learn about this skill, and immediately a new notification popped up explaining that the Essence of Poison includes all the poisons of the world. The more poison he absorbs, the higher his level of resistance to poisons will be. He can also use the resulting poison. The surprised guy thought that he could absorb and use poisons and wanted to trigger a skill window. But then he was interrupted by a scream and turned around to see those guys running away from something shouting to be saved. Turning around, the guy saw the skeletons covered with purple flames and heard someone say that he came because he heard a noise. The main magician, releasing a huge amount of mana, asked about what kind of mess there was. The delighted magicians shouted that the master was here and clenched their fists. The prisoners, seeing this magician, wondered what their main one was and whether he was dangerous. The magician raised his staff and began to accumulate a dark aura, and a new notification surfaced, saying that the NPC Regulus had activated a dark aura. The aura flew in all directions from the magician, and all the people fell under his zone. The guy who saw this hid behind the wall, thinking that he was counting on the fact that this freak would not return. Grinning maliciously, the magician raised his hands and created a ball with purple mana, shouted that now they would all die and released dark purple flashes in their direction. The magic crashed into the bodies of the guys and they began to file with screams. One of the magicians received it too, looked at the gentleman with a complaint. but immediately received another blow with an aura right in the stomach. Seeing this, the poor people shouted that he was a madman and ran towards the exit. People were lying on the ground with their eyes rolled up and their mouths wide open. Of course, the fleeing ones reached the same fate. The magician shouted that he would not let them escape, released a new wave, and people began to file like flies. Seeing this madness, the guy thought that the magician was crazy. He didn't even care about his comrades. Seeing how people were running towards the door, the guy thought that while the magician was busy with them, he could take a chance and escape. Suddenly, he remembered the condition of the secret quest. It said that he had to defeat the leader of the black magicians, Regulus, and thought that the reward could be good. He was sorry to retreat. Looking in the direction of the magician, he saw littered pipes, which in places burned with purple flames. And then he saw the boots on the feet of the enemy. With a frown on his face, he thought that he needed to check it out. He immediately used the skill and chose Regulus as the target. A search went on and a new notification with inventory surfaced, in which there were nightmare boots glowing orange. The delighted guy said it was great. And then he saw two other notifications informing him about the nightmare staff with 3%. And the nightmare ring with 8%, and they were all in orange windows. Smiling, the guy thought that he could not resist such a temptation. The magician, seeing that there was no one left, said that he seemed to have dealt with everyone, and then someone called him and turned around. He saw a guy walking towards him in a magician's robe and with a green aura around his hand. The guy, grinning maliciously, told him to give his good. The magician asked who else he was and the guy smiled maliciously and said that he was a thief. Hearing this, the magician frowned at him, saying that there was a rat among them. And then I asked who sent him. He wouldn't have gotten in here alone. What kind of idiot would sneak into a dangerous mansion just for the sake of some kind of theft? The guy who heard this couldn't say anything, because he's the one who snuck in here for some pathetic theft. A purple circle appeared under the magician and he waved his staff and released a huge amount of gloomy aura, saying that he did not think that an ordinary boy would interfere with his work. He definitely won't leave here alive. Immediately, something began to come out of the purple smoke. Gloomier than a cloud, the magician said that the guy would not leave here alive and released bone spears towards the guy. The surprised guy noticed them with a grin, said that it was easy and easily dodged each spear. The magician was surprised and having formed 3 magic circles in front of him, he released one spell after another from the purple smoke and asked with shock how this was possible. The guy was looking at his mini-map, thinking that all the enemy's attacks were visible on it. Taking out a dagger, the guy jumped away from another spear and thought that he had to deal with it as soon as possible. Otherwise, the enemies would run to the noise. Stopping, the guy decided that now was the time and bent the magician towards the barrier. The surprised magician, not believing, said that how is this possible? This thief was able not only to evade his attacks, but also to sneak into his blind spot. The guy said that the magician was too loud hit him, but the magician managed to put the staff in the block. The magician noticed that the thief was hitting the weak points of the shield and realized that it was becoming dangerous, and immediately caused bone growths in front of him, which caused the guy to jump back. The guy asked in surprise about the barricade of bones. The magician, thinking that he would block his escape routes, began to attack with weak attacks in order to save mana. The guy almost got hit by a bone spike, but managed to jump away. Looking at the magician, the guy realized that he was not like the rest of the idiots. The magician is trying to wear him down, as the advantage is on his side. With bone walls, black balls flew towards the guy, and seeing this, the guy panicked a little. He needed to come up with something urgently before his health dropped to 0. Suddenly he saw red traces right on the bone growths and thought about Parker. These traces meant that he could use the skill on its surface as well. Jumping away from 2 dark balls, the guy immediately called throwing knives and looking around, thought that he would overcome the bone wall with the help of Parker and then finish off the magician with knives. But he was not sure that this plan would work. The chances of hitting the target are tandem. The guy jumped back again from the bone walls that grew right in front of the magician, and then from the black balls. At the same time, he was thinking about whether he should slip out of the magician's sight before throwing the knives. Then he noticed a green substance on the ground. It was a potion that they used for the experiment. The guy grinned nastily and decided to take a chance. At this time, the man, creating walls and dark balls, thought that he should never let this bastard go alive. If he escapes, then all his labors will go to waste. With such thoughts, the magician released another batch of dark balls and in a rage thought that he would kill the guy and restore the essence of the poison that he stole. The magician cornered the guy with the help of the summoned wall of bones. He will not be able to dodge the balls. Shouting for the guy to dry, the man released a portion of dark balls in his direction. but then noticed that he did not see the guy and wondered where he was. At this time, the guy found himself on the wall of bones and smiling with daggers in his hand looked at the magician. The surprised magician wondered how he got there, but the guy released all three throwing knives and they hit the shoulder and stomach of the magician. The man clenched his teeth and thought that it hurt, but the wounds were not fatal. He could still fight. The knives did not touch the organs. Laughing loudly, the magician shouted that he was sorry. He thought that the guy had something else in store, and this was just a desperate attempt to survive. The guy didn't answer anything, just looked at him, and the old man under the hood, smiling, said that the guy managed to catch him by surprise. But his wounds are not serious, which means he won't die, and this trick won't work a second time. The guy went down and seeing it, the magician said that if he admits defeat and begs for mercy, he might let him live. The guy who came down said that the knives he threw at the magician were covered with the very poison he was experimenting with. One bottle broke during the fight. The magician recoiled in surprise and immediately noticed that his wounds were festering. The guy, grinning, said that it was his own fault that he had spilled the poison created by him. He's a real idiot. The magician began to weaken and a new notification surfaced above him, saying he was now under the debuffs of confusion, bleeding and poisoning. The magician bent down trembling, and seeing such a magician, the guy smiled and said that the poison had worked. But the magician screamed in despair at the top of his voice. The bone walls fell apart and the guy, seeing this, thought that the caster was dying, so the walls were also collapsing. The magician said he couldn't die here. He has to survive for the sake of his goal. The magician began to release smoke, and seeing this, the guy wondered in surprise how he could release smoke. The guy immediately jerked towards the magician and started to be the one, but he created a purple shield. The magician said that he recognizes the strength of the guy but added that he will not be able to remove the magician. He lost his last chance when he used all the mana to create the perfect shield. Having said that, the magician laughed loudly and crazily. Smiling, the guy took out a bottle and asked if the magician was sure, and then sprinkling water into the shield. He said that now they were checking that it was stronger and took out his dagger with lightning bolts. And then he added that the magician's poison is stronger or his dagger. He struck the shield with thunder, and seeing this, the magician could not help but say that this weapon is terrible. The dagger pierced the shield and soon took out the magician. Smiling, the guy said goodbye to the magicians with flashes of electricity around. Huge smoke burst out from that place with the sound of an explosion. The magician fell to his knees and smoke billowed around him. Looking at him, the guy said that he should have just given him his things, then there would have been no blood. Kicking the old man, the guy said there was nothing to do. Nightmare boots appeared nearby, and seeing them, the guy happily said that here they were, great shoes, and then looking at the old man, he said that he needed to see what else he had. At this time, the guy turned around, suddenly noticed the old man's face, and thinking, said that he seemed to have seen him somewhere and then remembered the Baron. In a panic, he asked in surprise that it was really Baron Balkans, who ruled Patron. At this time, a new notification popped up in front of the guy, saying that he had learned the truth about the secret experiment. It turned out that the black magicians conducting inhuman experiments worked for Baron Balkans. The guy nodded while reading the notification. After that, a new notification appeared, saying that he had stopped the atrocities committed by the black magician Regulus, the owner of the Patron, and soon everyone would know about the experiment. People will be grateful to the mysterious hero who protected them, and the royal family will send people who will conduct a full investigation. After that, a new notification surfaced, saying that he had lost the criminal, so that the points of notoriety were not added, and his notoriety was reduced. But the guy is still a wanted fugitive. He must leave the mansion before the guards catch him at the scene of the crime. Reading all this, the guy grabbed his head, calling everything and everything. Suddenly he heard footsteps and looked at the mini-map, saw nothing. Did the mini-map stop working because he killed an important NPC and he wanted to quietly escape? The guy moved towards the door, thought that he would use the same door as Regulus, otherwise the guards would definitely catch him. Running towards the exit, the guy soon found himself in front of 3 forks. Looking at them, the guy thought hard about where to go, and suddenly he would choose the wrong road. The guards will be here soon, so he must hurry. Suddenly the guy felt something at his feet and recoiled, turning around, thinking about whether the old man was still alive. But then he noticed that very raccoon. Seeing him, the guy sat down and asked why he didn't run away. The raccoon turned and pointed to one of the paths, and the guy, seeing this, asked the animal that he needed to go there. To which the raccoon nodded, and the guy, thinking that fate was mocking him, looked like a raccoon standing in front of the path. Looking at him, the guy was thinking hard about whether he should trust the raccoon. After a while, he went outside after following the raccoon and saw a glowing moon and a beautiful clear sky. Looking around, the guy saw the river and remembered that this river is located outside the city. So the old man had made a secret exit after all. Townspeople rarely come here, so this is the perfect place. Looking around, the guy wondered where, by the way, the raccoon is. Really ran away. Licking his lips, the guy thought that he used to think that he would sell it, but maybe it wasn't the best idea. You can't put living creatures in the inventory, so maybe they will meet again. There was a keyboard tapping somewhere. In some chat, Angela wrote that there was a big event in Paterna yesterday. Some Brian wrote that he didn't care. And some stupid guy asked what she was about those secret experiments that were carried out under the Baron's mansion. The idiot wrote that the dark magician is more like a rotten magician. Angela wrote that it was a silly pun. The Baron was a black magician. It's true, because the royal family even sent people to investigate. The dumbass replied that it was such an important event, since even the royal family got involved. Some Ruby said that the nickname of the dumbass matched his questions. The event was even broadcast. Some white man said that the king's men had caught all the remaining magicians under the mansion and found the kidnapped ones. At this time, people watched as the knights led the captured magicians somewhere. Someone from the crowd asked that they used people from the slums for experiments. Someone else said that he could not believe that such a thing was happening in the middle of the city. Someone else said that the abductees claimed that only one person saved them. He defeated the magicians himself. Someone else asked in disbelief, they are sure of it for sure. The hero of these events himself was sitting outside the game and looking at the description of the nightmare boots on his smartphone. He put this rare item up for auction. The guy looking at them thought that these boots were for magicians, so he decided to sell them for $500. At this time, he raised his head to one of the screens and saw what was happening in the game and thought that they were now dealing with the case of Baron Balkans. He was glad he had escaped. It seems that many people have found out about what happened. He hoped they wouldn't find him. Suddenly, a message came to his smartphone and looking there, he saw that the message was from Conile, who asked him if her brother wanted to play together. Then there was the following message saying that Mira would be with them. Thinking that the girl is more sociable in the chat than in real life, the guy sent her that soon. The girl asked him that he was not lying, and then asked if she could call friends, to which the guy laconically replied that the girl could, too, answering that it was Super sent a smiley bear. Coming out of the booth, the guy thought about that girlfriend. Miri looks like a sweet and kind dog. Then he noticed an acquaintance who was leaning over the table with an unimportant look and asked her what was the matter. Getting up, the girl with the sleepy face said she was glad to see him. Looking at such a friend, the guy asked her if she really had a lot of work yesterday. She's not usually so busy. And then I told her to take it easy on herself. The girl thanked him, saying that it was difficult, but the guy interrupted her, asking if she could hurry up because he wants to play. The girl looked at him with a dissatisfied look and after passing the drink through the laser told him to take it already, to which he thanked her. While the guy was walking to the booth, he heard someone say that a new event was coming soon. There will be battles for the territories of August. Surprised, Luke turned, decided to check this information later. Soon, the August community welcomed all the players and invited them to the community. The host suggested that everyone should look at the best players of the season who made a name for themselves. They will tell people about high-level players and those who deserve to be in the spotlight. Everyone had high expectations for these competitions. After the flyer with the top 10 of the week among the participants of the event, the host informed the audience that they are now getting to know the best players. They're promising candidates. The player who started recently is Kataro from Japan. After the words of the presenter, a man in Chinese robes with 2 swords was shown on the screen. The host continued by saying that Kataro uses 2 swords and never loses. A very curious sample. In the last war for territories, Damien and Count showed themselves especially well. The swordsman Kataro stood in a pose with his eyes closed under the hum of voices. After him, the presenter introduced the white-haired wizard Kenny, who just stood still. The host said that these are the most promising newcomers, the swordsman Kataro and the wizard Kenny. Immediately, a Hopsa comment appeared, who said that this Kenny was one of those who had a hidden job. Someone else with a smiley face, instead of a name, said that it was true. He was a specialist in poisons. LJH turned to others, said that he was new to the world of August and asked who had the highest score in the ability assessment simulator. Sumo said that there was a ball that even high-level players could not compare with, like there was 97. The newcomer asked who the player was and the person with the smiley face said it was Luke. Luke himself was now looking at the window of the system thinking about what had happened successfully with the war. It's not like it's going to be over in a day or two. Maybe he should go somewhere else for a while. While the guy was staring at the map, suddenly he heard someone say that it was not a joke that both lords had set a reward for their contribution to this territorial war. The guy was immediately attracted by the words reward and he immediately raised his head. Another loader said that he had also heard about it. It was said that those who get into the top 10 are guaranteed to receive high-level items. Another one said that not just a high-level item, those who get into volume 3 will be given rare ones. Another one said that getting into the top 3 is not realistic. The guy involuntarily thought about it himself. A high-level item is guaranteed if you get into the top 10. They always provide a list of awards before the start of the war. If he applies his theft skill, will he be able to steal those rewards? Well, even if he can't, it's okay. It's not so difficult to get into the top 10. During this time, he could raise the level and earn good money by stealing during the war. Having decided, the guy bent into the cart, deciding to go to war. At this time, someone was watching him from the bushes. The sky was clear and there was a crowd of onlookers in front of the Chinese palace. Or rather, they were standing in front of the board wrapped around and looking at something. Luke was there too, looking at the list. There were so many. Although Demian's territory was the first to present a list of awards, isn't there too many of them? The territory of Calm does not have many registered users. Someone in front of him asked that the guy on the left wasn't Katero, but who was next to him. Someone else said that he had recently been shown on TV as the owner of a secret job. They say he is a master of poisons and is close to Katero. Luke was also interested in this and he looked in his direction. If he was a poison specialist, then he could help Luke. The guy immediately called the window of the essence of the poison, which was now the first level, and began to read its description. The description of the skill said that this is the essence of any poison. A skill can absorb poison within a certain rank. The more it absorbs, the higher the resistance to poisons. It can even dilute the absorbed poison. The guy wondered if he would be able to absorb that guy's poison if he used this skill. Immediately, a knight appeared on the podium and opened the scroll, said that he would now tell about the rewards. The guy was looking at the window popping up in front of everyone, thinking that starting with rare items for the top 3 and a high-level item for the top 10, aren't they all good? Looking at these knights who were level 80, the guy decided that it seemed safer to get rewards by fighting for Demian. Looks like he's winning. Judging by the Lord's guards guarding the Lord, they cannot be stolen. He doesn't need to look at the territory of Calm to understand that he is in a worse position than Demian. But still, the guy wondered if he should still go and see. He decided to go, and when he came here, there was a gloomy atmosphere in the city. It reminded the guy of a portrait gallery. Here, too, a lord stood on the podium and said that now he would tell about the awards. The guy, looking at the window pop up one after another, thought that most of these would be things sold at a high price at auctions. But to his surprise, he was shocked, because he had never seen such items again, and he recognized gloves among everything, which, judging by the sign, were one of the items of the Lord's shadows. The guy wondered why he was among the awards on the territory of Calm. It was shitty. At this time, 2 guys were looking at all the people on one of the buildings. Katero, smiling, said, "Friend, that somehow I managed to gather enough people." Kane, looking ahead, said that even from such a small territorial war, you can win a lot. There is no death penalty either. Who, looking ahead, said it would be a pretty boring war. The white-haired one asked a friend what he expected from such a small place. They just need to get the job done. They wouldn't have come here if the Lord hadn't offered so much money. To which his friend replied that it was true. Looking down from the building, Katero said that they need to finish here as soon as possible and get out of here, because after all, there is no one interesting here. After leaving the booth, the guy sat down in the common room thinking that he should look at the August community. Today's gamer uploaded videos this week, and finally he found the right video. Katero and Kenny. It looks like this war was their official debut. Their level is quite high. They are almost at the level of rankers. Kenny only has 70 points, but his poison master ability quickly raised his level. It looks like it's going to be harder than he thought. Why, of all the items of the Shadow Lord are in the territory of Calm. Sighing, the guy decided to check out the newcomers' videos. Immediately, the voice of the presenter was heard, who reported that they were surrounded by 5 players and this is a critical situation. The host shouted that it was a poison attack that they would never see on these levels. They were fast and really worthy of the title of Master of Poisons. The guy with a serious face looked ahead and decided that it was possible, although it would take some time. The war has almost begun and in the plateau field it will soon begin. Occupation was chosen as the method of war. On one side stood Katero and Kenny together with hundreds of warriors and waited for the announcement of the beginning. A new notification surfaced in front of everyone, saying that the condition for victory was the occupation of all enemy bases, of which there were 7. The war is going on between Demian's territory and Kaum's territory. The sky was as clear as ever, but hundreds of people were standing on the desolate plains. Among them was Luke. He decided to do it quietly. At the very least, the odds will be slightly higher as the level of a high-level player will be lowered to narrow the gap in strength. The guy called his status and immediately his name Luke was highlighted, above which was the title of the worst criminal, and under which was his level 32. Then came his work as a thief and then the characteristics. Endurance at 6 points, agility 21 plus 1, strength 6, speed 1, luck 4 and faith minus 10 24. He had 1,361 notoriety points. The guy took out a dagger and a whetstone and thought that with the surrounding 42, 43 levels and above, by 10 indicators, the situation could change. He had been preparing for this for 10 days, but how could he steal items from his allies? Now the plane was divided between 2 groups. Sharpening the dagger, the guy after a while heard the roar of a trumpet and immediately, someone shouted that they needed to attack. Everyone ran against each other and the slaughter began. Metal on metal could be heard everywhere, but Luke hit at one of the boulders, saying that he needed to turn everything around while everyone was busy. Suddenly he noticed the animal and wondered if it was not the raccoon from the secret laboratory. At this time, the guy with white hair, closing his eyes, began to release a green aura and people immediately noticed their actions. In some places, a pond with poison began to appear in the field. The poison released steam and a smell that caused the enemies to fall right on the battlefield. The players looked in horror at the notification that said they had been poisoned by the poisonous fumes from the poison pond. The notification said that over time, they would receive damage due to the poison. Looking at this, the players said it was crazy. They can get poisoned even from fumes. The white-haired one, laughing loudly, released a new magic. Clouds covered the clear sky and azure drops began to fall from them, turning into rain. A new notification immediately surfaced, telling the players that a poisonous rain was falling on them and they were poisoned. Over time, players will take damage due to the poison. Seeing this, the players shouted that since they were dead anyway, they should run to the enemy fortress and capture its moisture. It's just a cheap trick to prevent them from capturing the flag. With these words, the warriors went ahead and right in front of the castle they saw a lone figure with 2 swords. Kadora, standing with his eyes closed, said that he did not think so. One of the players shouted to his accomplices not to be afraid, because he was only one and everyone ran to the victim. Someone else shouted on the move that even if he was a ranker, he would not be able to cope with everyone at once. But to their surprise, Kadora released an aura and pushed the first players back with his ball. The players couldn't believe it, because he alone stopped all their attacks. One of the players with brown hair was thinking that he had level 43, not so low compared to the levels of the others. But how could he have such a fast reaction speed? Shouting that it was outrageous, the brown-haired man ran towards Kadora, but he easily served the blow. Seeing this, the guy couldn't believe it. Immediately, a rain of arrows flew towards Kadora, who was twirling his swords, but all the arrows, without meeting the player, then broke or bounced off his swords. Seeing this, the player shouted that they should not stop, but continue the attack. Kadora, smiling, said it was impressive that being poisoned they had come this far. Still fighting off the arrows, the guy asked, since this is all these guys are capable of, isn't it his turn? With these words, he released his aura and in an instant, cutting everything and everything, found himself behind several players and in front of other players. One of the players, seeing the skill of the opponent, shouted that with the Kadora sword master in front and the poisonous magic of Kenny in the back, they could not do anything. Besides, the other players of Demian's side were also rushing here. A new notification surfaced in front of everyone, saying that the capture of the flag of the Fortress of the Roof had begun. Luke looked at this carnage and thought that just one fight or 2 knights became the center of attention due to pure strength. And then stopping himself, he told himself that he didn't have time for this, he needed to hurry. The guy quickly moving between the enemies destroyed one with daggers into holes in the brain, dealing a critical blow, and immediately stole loot. A new notification popped up in front of the guy, saying